This is the battery-powered circular saw that finally made me stop reaching for a corded one. It cuts fast, tracks straight, and the blade stops almost as soon as my finger lifts off the trigger. The DEWALT DC S578B FlexVolt 60V Max circular saw sits in that sweet spot for serious do-it-yourself users and working pros who actually push a saw every day. If you build decks, frame walls, rip sheet goods, or you just want a cordless saw that does not flinch at thick lumber, this is the one that has the power and the control to keep up. It is not the lightest option, and it is not the smallest, but it feels purpose-built for real job site work where consistency matters more than saving a few ounces. Let me start with the physical design that shows up in daily use. The handles are the first thing I noticed. The main handle has a comfortable, grippy texture and a trigger that feels confident without being stiff. The front auxiliary handle sits at a natural angle, so I can steer the saw without fighting my wrist. The shoe is a solid metal base that stays flat and true, which sounds boring until you realize how much it matters when you are following a pencil line across a full sheet of plywood. There are clear bevel markings on the side with positive stops at 22.5 degrees and at 45 degrees, and it will go all the way to 57 degrees. The depth adjustment is quick and positive. Pull the lever, slide to the mark, lock it down, and the setting holds without creeping. The guard retracts smoothly and does not chatter when I ease into a cut. There is an onboard wrench tucked into the handle and a spindle lock button, so blade changes are fast and painless. The saw I use came as part of a kit years ago, and it included a tough DEWALT bag with a sturdy handle and a top zipper, which has been perfect for moving it around, though this particular model number is often sold as a tool-only body. Getting started is basically pick it up and cut. Slide in a FlexVolt pack, set the depth to just a hair below the thickness of the material and pull the trigger. There is no ramp-up lag. The motor comes to speed quickly and holds that speed as the blade meets the wood. The guard is set up to blow sawdust away from the cut line, and the sight line is excellent. The notch on the shoe matches the blade, so I can decide whether I want to cut on the line or keep the line, and the saw does exactly what my pencil told it to do. The electric brake is the silent hero. I finish a cut, release the trigger, and the blade is still almost immediately. That makes it faster to reposition, safer around my hands, and it stops those little nervous moments when a spinning blade is hovering near my leg while I move the saw. Power and control are where this saw earns its keep. The brushless motor has a strong, steady feel. Ripping 2 by lumber does not bog it down, even when I lean on the cut to keep a long board moving. On 3/4 plywood it tracks smooth and clean. On hardwoods like oak and maple, I get a steady feed rate without scorch marks when I pair it with a sharp blade. If I swap to a higher tooth count finish blade for cabinetry or furniture work, the saw is precise enough that I can get a glue-ready edge off a straight edge. If I leave the framing blade on and push through damp pressure-treated decking, it stays on plane, and I do not get that side-to-side wobble that cheaper saws love to throw at you. I have used it for years in real remodel dust. It is covered in scratches. The shoe has the kind of scuffs that only come from sliding across subfloor all day, and it just keeps going. On a full FlexVolt pack, especially the larger 9 amp-hour pack, I can break down a full stack of sheets, then frame a couple of walls before I need a recharge. When I am doing an all-day build, I keep 2 batteries in rotation, and that keeps me moving. The FlexVolt system is a real convenience if you already live in DEWALT land. I share the same battery with a miter saw, a reciprocating saw, and a grinder, and swapping back and forth is as simple as clicking the pack out and in. Real-world scenes are where the small details add up. When I am cutting rafters, I set the bevel to 45 degrees, snap into the stop, and the angle lock holds tight through the cut. When I am trimming stair treads, I dial the depth a touch shy of the material so I do not score the subfloor underneath, and the saw stays honest to that setting. Breaking down full sheets on a pair of sawhorses, the shoe glides without grabbing, and the chips do not bury my cut line. On a long rip through a 2x10, the weight of the saw actually helps. It plants the blade and reduces chatter, so the edge stays straighter. I also like the rafter hook. It is not flashy, but it saves time when I need to hang the saw on a joist between cuts. For a specific use case, I recently rebuilt a small deck. Joists, blocking, stair stringers, the whole lot. The DEWALT handled every part of that job. I used the detent at 22.5 degrees for decorative cuts on the rail. I made repeated crosscuts on 2x material with a speed square as a guide, and the saw tracked so close to my mark that I did not need to sand the ends. When I switched to composite decking, I put on a fine-tooth blade, set the depth to just past the boards, and made clean, chip-free cuts across the face. The electric brake let me reposition quickly without dancing around a spinning blade, and the power never felt thin even after a string of cuts in a row. There are some thoughtful features that feel genuinely helpful. The sight lines on the shoe are honest and easy to read, and they match the actual kerf. The positive bevel stops mean I do not have to squint at a gauge when I am moving fast. The spindle lock button and the onboard wrench make blade changes a non-event, which nudges me to keep a sharp blade on, and that alone improves every cut. The balance front to back is also better than it looks. It is a heavy saw, but it is balanced in a way that keeps the nose from diving when I set it down, and that saves my knuckles and my material. It is not perfect, and I think it is fair to talk about that. The weight that helps on long rips is not as friendly for overhead work. If you are trimming plywood on a wall or working above shoulder height, you will feel it. The guard can hesitate on thin laminates or when I try to ease into a cut at a very shallow angle, so I make sure to start with the blade squarely on the edge and then tilt into the bevel. The dust ejection is good for visibility, but without a vacuum attached, it can throw chips toward me in certain grain patterns or wind conditions. A vacuum adapter helps, though it is one more thing to keep track of. The depth scale is useful, but like most circular saws, I treat it as a quick reference and still spot check my blade depth by eye when accuracy really matters. Even with those quirks, I keep reaching for this saw. It has that dependable feel where I do not have to think about it while I am in the middle of a job. The cut line stays visible, the blade stays true, and the brake makes the rhythm of cut, stop, move, and cut again feel natural and safe. It feels like a tool that was designed for daily punishment and tuned for accurate work, not just raw power. If you are a framer, a remodeler, a deck builder, or a serious do-it-yourself person who wants one cordless circular saw that can live on your sawhorses and take on almost anything, the DEWALT DC-S578B FLEXVOLT 60V Max belongs on your short list. If you prefer a featherweight saw for occasional trim and tight spaces, this is probably more tool than you need. For me, the mix of muscle, accuracy, and that instant stop on the blade has made it a reliable partner on a lot of projects, and I expect to keep using it for years. To learn more about the DEWALT DC-S500 and 78 billion FLEXVOLT 60V Max circular saw, please check the comments section. Thank you for watching.